Got Conduit contributor Hannah Webb Howard is back with us. Hannah, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It's always great to talk to you. Now, I want to remind our listeners, I'm sure they are very familiar with you at this point because you've guest hosted the program, but you are a student in law school here in Arkansas. Last time we had you on a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about starting a Second Amendment society. What can you tell us about that?
Well, so first of all, we have had an absolutely overwhelming response, which has surprised me, so I'm sure it would surprise all your listeners. So just background on what the group is. It's the Second Amendment Society, but when I introduce the group in the interest meeting and emails I send out, the very first point I want to make is, listen, this is not some gun nut group, organization with people, with 10 guns on their hips, walking around with AK-47. By all means, if you are that person, this is the group for you, but that's not the kind of image I want to portray. I want it to be a very inclusive, welcoming group because we want to be more of an educational outreach for people. So we want to say, hey, we're gun owners. We shoot guns. We own guns. We carry our guns responsibly. And so if you've never shot a gun, or if you don't understand guns, or if you don't know the difference between a .22 and an AR-15 and a handgun, well, then we want to be that group to teach you the difference and then allow you a place to learn how to shoot the gun, learn how to properly handle the gun. Here's how a safety works, or, here's how the safety works on this gun, and here's the gun. For example, I have a Glock, and if you know anything about a Glock, in mine specifically, it doesn't necessarily have a safety, but the trigger itself is a safety feature. And that's something that a layperson isn't going to know or understand. And that's very valuable information if you are going to own a gun.
Yeah.
And so we want our group to be, hey, you may think we're a gun nut, and that may be true, but I want to be non-intimidating to you and just a normal person and teach you that these things aren't as scary as what you think.
Well, and I'm glad that you're doing that, and I think that is a strategic approach, the approach that you're using, because we are talking about people who want to be a bunch of attorneys. And the fact of the matter is, Hannah, most attorneys are big leftists, and they don't really understand. They don't seem to be conservative a lot of times. And you have people on the left that don't know the difference between, they call a magazine a clip, and they think a silencer actually sounds the way it does in a movie. I mean, there's just a ton of misconceptions out there.
Well, and another part of this is, the group that I'm trying to, I'm being very authentic because I'm not somebody who can have a conversation with you about 20 different guns and the different facets of every gun and the differences between all of them. I have my gun. I know how it works. I know how to use it. I know how to properly use it. And I know how to use it if the time ever comes that I need to ever defend myself. I also know how to use the guns that, I grew up hunting with, rifles or shotguns or whatever. I know how to use those guns. But if you want to sit here and have a very detailed conversation with me about, if we were to go to a gun show, I could not intelligently walk around and discuss every detail of every gun that's there. That's not me. And not that I'm not interested and not that I think it's cool. It's just not necessarily something I actively pursue. And so when I talk about I want to keep my gun rights, I literally just want to walk around with my gun to protect myself in the grocery store or in Little Rock, because that is where I live. It's a very dangerous place. I want to be able to leave my house, drive down the street, and protect myself. So that's the place that I come from.
Practical use.
Yes, and I hope no one would shame me for that, because I think that's very realistic, and that's how most people feel about guns. Even if people are very passive and, they just own a gun in case somebody robs their house, I think across the board it's generally a very practical idea of how to use a gun. And so the whole thing is coming from a very authentic place for me. For example, we want our group to, we're planning an event coming up, our first social event, which is going to be at a gun range. Here, there's one just outside of Little Rock, super easy access for everyone. Going to go have a little social event at the gun range. unless something changes between now and then, it'll be the first time I ever go to a gun range. Because when I grew up, I mean, of course, I grew up in Paragould, and we lived outside city limits on plenty of land that I learned how to shoot guns in my backyard. And so when we wanted to do target practice, you could literally walk out on the deck and shoot your gun. And that's how I learned. That's how I practiced. You know, if a group of friends would get together to go shoot guns, because we did that. That's a very, it may not be a prominent thing here in Little Rock. It's a very prominent thing in Northeast Arkansas to go hang out with your friends and shoot skeet or something along those natures. Yeah, it's seriously.
Yeah.
And so we would just go to somebody's farm, somebody's hunting land, and shoot off the levee or shoot in the field. So that's how I grew up with guns. And so I think if anything, I think it helps that I'm coming from a genuine place of I can identify with all you people who may not, understand everything that's going on. Because when I walk into this gun range, I'm going to have to be very raw with these people and be able to listen. You need to teach me the proper etiquette in the gun range. Hopefully I can look to someone and be like, hey,
absolutely,
I'm the leader of this group, but I'm learning with you.
Yeah.
And so that's the baseline of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Well, that's good. I think that's fantastic. In the midst of a law school, and we know, law schools tend to teach more case law than Constitution, or at least that's what I've been told. I mean, I still know you take classes on the Constitution and everything else. But, folks, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Hannah Webb Howard, Conduit contributor. Hannah, I sent you this story. I'd like to get your opinion on it. It's from the Daily Wire, and we talked about it earlier in the week. Jury rules against Texas dad fighting 7-year-old son's gender transition. Did you see the story?
I did see the story.
Well, what are we going to do? I mean, as a young conservative yourself, what is going on with this? I mean, this is something that, it just keeps coming up in the headlines more and more. People trying to alter the chemistry of their children before they hit puberty. I mean, to me, I believe it's child abuse, but we have states affirming this now.
The whole conversation and the whole issue is very hard for me to grasp that we're even having this conversation, and not in a hateful, malicious way towards people who may genuinely be struggling with this. I don't know. I certainly don't struggle with it, so I can't. If this is a real struggle for people, I don't know if that's why. But it's very mind-blowing to me that, even when I was growing up, this is not a conversation that we would have had. This is not a conversation that I would have had in middle school. It's not something I would have been exposed to middle school, and that was not that long ago. And so it's mind-blowing to me that that's how it's shifted in what I consider to be a short period of time. And then, even apart from the politics of it, of course I am a Christian, and those are the ideals and the foundation that come first in my life. And I think it's a very hard conversation to have even as a Christian, because of course, if you're going to have that genuine conversation with a person, you don't ever want to come off, preaching the hellfire and brimstone, because that's, of course, going to turn somebody off immediately. And so you want to come at it as a place of, loving, understanding, but like, hey, I don't agree with you, and here's why. Let's have this loving conversation. Where do you even begin to have that conversation with this topic? And it's been so pressurized to be so politically correct that you have to tiptoe around what can I say and what can't I say. So that's a whole part of the conversation that I don't even know how to begin to address.
Well, I mean, walking on eggshells is certainly a thing that's happening now. I had an experience at the drive-thru the other day where I misgendered somebody. Actually, I didn't. I mean, I gendered them correctly.
Oh no!
But then, anyway, it was interesting. But I mean, with the courts, I mean, this father, for example, every single day, you have to see your son sexually abused, and you have to maintain your calm because the courts are not going to be fair to you. And the only way you can survive this and get your son through this alive is to calmly allow your son to be tortured right before your eyes and outlast the opposition. That's what this is like. And I'm thinking as a dad, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you can do this. I mean, how in the world is this something that is going on? And we also have this testimony that He's witnessed his ex-wife only giving the child love and affection when he's acting like a girl. Then he gets the affection. I mean, so it is very much abuse, but yet it's being affirmed across the country. And this particular child uses the women's bathroom and everything else. Have you ever had? Let me ask you this, Hannah. Have you ever had that experience where you walk into a bathroom and it's like, what's going on here?
So I actually have. I am currently in my 6th year of higher education, and of course, and I'm not saying that it may not happen in high schools too, but I experienced it during my higher education career. There was a man who identifies as female, whether or not they have, had the physical transition, I'm not sure. But yeah, there have been multiple times, and it's just one of those things. I have to use the bathroom with him, and not that anything has ever, happened to make me feel uncomfortable, apart from the fact that I know that I'm in there with a born man. And nothing's ever happened. I've never been in any,
but it's something. It's
strange
a
scenario beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But it genuinely is a reality. And because here in Arkansas, especially, when I was still living in Paragould and Jonesboro, you don't really you see these things and you think they're happening in New York and whatever. You can live with that because it's not at home. But the truth is, this has happened to me in Arkansas. It's happened right here at home. And so it is coming, is what I'm saying. And, you mentioned, it's really hard for you as a dad to sit here and read that story. Well, I don't have children, but I am of childbearing years, and eventually it's going to happen. And my children are going to be raised, and yours too, where we have to have these genuine conversations with them in middle school.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up. My parents didn't have that conversation with me because they didn't have to. So I don't know how I'm supposed to turn around and have that conversation with a 7, 8-year-old who barely understands that, what puberty is.
Yep.
And how do you have that conversation with them? I do not know.
I don't know. You maybe having a middle school conversation at home in a home school. That's what I've considered, just because I'm thinking, I just don't know what to do about it. Because there is such a, I feel like you have a responsibility as a parent, to kind of look out, in the future and see these things. But as far as this dad is concerned, I'm not sure why he hasn't gone to some, and I know this is a terrible thing to say, but like looking at non-extradition countries at this point, because if you were to witness this type of abuse and your own government is sanctioning it, I know that's not the answer, but my goodness, I feel so terrible for all these children, and we're now going to start saying that this is okay to do these hormone blockers. And occasionally you'll have a celebrity or something. I think like Mario Lopez from Saved by the Bell, he came out and he said, yeah, I think that's wrong to give somebody hormone blockers before they're even at puberty. They don't even know what they want yet. And apparently this guy actually, his mom decided to let him start to transition because he wanted a McDonald's toy that was for females. And so, then of course the celebrity gets hammered. Mario Lopez just absolutely was destroyed, had to come out and apologize. And it's like, wow. There's no room for common sense. And so it's definitely going to be a very rocky road. And I'm curious, Hannah, as a law student, are you following this? I understand there's going to be a Supreme Court ruling on something concerning transgenderism, right?
Sure. So there's a case that is up before Supreme Court now regarding transgender rights. But the difference between, so you remember when I think it was back in 2015, when the Supreme Court upheld gay marriage as a constitutional right.
Yeah.
And so with that being a constitutional right, it changes the way that the government can regulate it, if they can regulate it at all. And so it's like the highest form of the government can't touch this that the Supreme Court can give. The fact that they said, no, it's in the Constitution. And this case is a Title VII case, which is just a statute, so it's just a law. And so when they decide this case, it isn't necessarily going to be the same type of constitutional case that was decided with gay marriage. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that case is coming, but just be aware that when that holding comes out, it's a little bit different of a situation than what happened with gay marriage. But depending on how that case turns out, it's either going to be, a huge victory for advocates for transgender rights, or it's not. And so we shall see. And I think that case, and I don't know if I'm wrong, I'm terribly sorry, but I think it's going to be decided this year. So we'll know something fairly quickly on it.
Yeah, it should be interesting. What they're essentially arguing, just looking over what I'm looking at right now, at issues whether the gay and transgender people are covered by by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which bars employers from discriminating against employees on the basis of sex as well as race, color, and national origin. That's what's interesting is okay, well, how are we going to define sex? Number one, because according to the trans community, sex is something that's gender is now a choice, and not something that you're hardwired at, which is very, very strange. But also, I don't think it has anything to do with race, because with race, you can't really hide what you look like, but you don't necessarily know, nor do I want to know when I meet somebody for the first time, what they do in their bedroom or what their preferences are in that way. So we'll see what happens with it. But Hannah, it's always great to talk to you. I really appreciate you giving us your opinions and thoughts, and way to go on that Second Amendment Society. That's a good thing.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's always great to be with you.